And, okay, so you ask yourself, how's this going for us so far, at least right now? Well, I can report to you, like I did the other night, that I got up again this morning and I read the paper. And if you read the New York Times, it said jobless claims rise. Washington Post said consumer spending down. Reuters said planned layoffs on the rise. The Wall Street Journal said hiring slumps. And the Financial Times of London said manufacturing activity in the U.S. in September hits a low. Not good, huh? And then we know that 8.5% of our people are unemployed, or I don't know if it's 8.5%, but 8+%. And then if you take the people who have given up looking for jobs, it's got to be more. Yep. This is not a political statement, this is a fact. Right. Huh? You know, and so you look at that and you say, well, what's happening? Well, we lost 30% of our manufacturing jobs in the last 20 years. Now, we tried a solution. We tried to move them into financial services. We tried to take advantage of service and the velocity of money. But how did that work out for us, huh? Not so good. See, the U.S. triumphs on actually making things, on manufacturing and industry. This is what's happened over the years. And here's how it's all worked. I come back to, I can talk about Joe Johnson or Henry Ford. Let's talk about Henry Ford. Henry Ford had an idea in the 20th century. And it was a great idea. But he couldn't have done it alone, you know. He couldn't have, that idea would have meant nothing alone. He needed an amplifier for his idea. And he took the greatest commercial amplifier available in the world that day, that was the American workforce. Committed, focused, energetic. He got rich. And he should have. But along the way, he created prosperity for millions upon millions of Americans who made his idea a reality. And so you ask yourself, what's wrong today? Is it because, remember, we go forward on the brilliance of the few and the efforts of the many. Is it because we're no longer brilliant? We don't have innovative ideas? Well, you look around and you see like Google and, you know, and Microsoft. You see a lot of ideas. And I can tell you, the statistics say that 7 of 10 of the world's best universities are here in the United States. And since the Nobel Prize was inaugurated, there have been 853 awards. America's gotten 39% of those. 39%. And okay, maybe we're tailing off now. You know, we have more competition. Actually, in the last 10 years, we had 45% of those awards. So if anything, we're getting stronger. And of course, we have competition. China, right? China's a competitor. There have been 6 Chinese award winners for the Nobel Prize. 6. Right? All of them have been American citizens. So it's not ideas. Is it the American workforce? Maybe. Well, I can tell you that when I go to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, or Murphy, North Carolina, or Elizabethton, Tennessee, and walk the factory floor, the hallways of the offices, I see the same commitment and focus and energy that I imagine Henry Ford would have seen. What has changed is when I travel overseas, and I do all the time, I'm about to go to China tomorrow. When I walk those same types of floors in Shanghai or Delhi or Minsk, I see the same qualities. Commitment and energy and focus. And those people are hungry to advance their lives and build lives of prosperity and fulfillment. So, what needs to be done? We need to differentiate. Commitment and energy and focus are no longer differentiating in the global competition to be the amplifier for ideas. We still have ideas, but they're not all coming to the United States to be the amplifier, to be the commercial enabler. So what we need to do is arm our workforce with capability. And this is career and technical education. It's never been more important. Never, ever. And I see the role of business and education and government coming together in partnerships to make this a reality. And I see 2 areas. First area is enable the institutions. Things like our partnerships with Gateway and others, things like the Advanced Propulsion Lab and the Horizon Center, to make sure they have the proper facilities and the best equipment in the world. And then standards. just to make sure that the schools know exactly what industry is looking for and what actual skills will make this engine hum. And we work with NC3 and many of you in this room to make sure that happens. That's something we need to do. But here's the most important thing. Technical education and trades have an image problem. And this is a fairly significant perception problem, I would say. I was at the Atlantic Monthly about 9 months ago, and I gave a talk to a group of consultants and government officials and so on. And I mentioned this image gap. And they said, one question came from the audience, and it said, well, I don't think there's an image gap. So I asked this group of consultants and government leaders and business leaders, there isn't? How would you feel if your nephew or son or daughter came to you and said they wanted to be a machine programmer for a factory floor? And you could have heard a pin drop in that room because they knew the answer to that question. You see, those people, and a lot of people in America, view technical careers as a consolation prize for not getting into a 4-year degree. This has to change. It requires national leadership, both from business and education, but also from government. Government needs to set the tone. You see, Rosie the Riveter was one person, but the government at that, whether it was Theodore Roosevelt, whoever it was at that time, got the idea that if they put her picture up on posters, not millions, but hundreds of thousands of women will go into the factories and support the effort because they viewed it as important for this country. It was nothing more than jawboning that made it happen. I lived through this one in 1960. President Kennedy became, in 1961, President Kennedy became president, and he said, we're going to the moon in 10 years. And everybody believed it, and high school students around this country, if you went to a high school, 80% of high school students who were in the top of their class went into science or technology or engineering because it was in that effort. You see, Kennedy made the space program a national priority. He made being an engineer a national calling. This is what we need. We need national leadership that will say that the workforce is important. We are in a global competition. There's nothing more important than career and technical education. Technical education must be a national priority, and technical careers must be a national calling. However, I want to caution you. It's easier said than done. And here's the reason. Look, in some ways, I don't mean to self-aggrandize or anything like that, but there's some relationship. Anybody who leads an organization, so I can speak with some experience on this, is that there's a couple of things. First of all, no ideas come to your table that are not worthy. All the ideas that come to your table are worthy because the other ones get knocked off before they get to you. And by the way, when you're challenged, every idea everybody presents to you sounds like a good one. So in the atmosphere of national politics, when we talk about deficits and fiscal cliffs, choices have to be made. At Snap-on, we say strategy is about choice, and progress is the child of the right choices. It's not about execution, it's about making the right choice. So we must convince our national leaders to prioritize career and technical education as the first domestic priority. Now, let me turn the Atlantic Monthly on its ear a little bit in a different lens and a different angle. You see, in this room, this is easier said than done. Let's assume, for example, it's a zero-sum game. And we must choose, for strategy, for progress, the number one domestic agenda item. The number one. Knowing that all others might not get funded. Are you in this room willing to back career and technical education above all others? If you actually ask yourself, maybe it's a tougher question than you might think, huh? You can only do career and technical education. You can't invest in 4 years. You can't invest in other programs. Are you willing to do that? Because I am. Because I believe we are being challenged. I believe the workforce does deliver us from evil. I believe career and technical education is the enabler that leads us to victory. I believe that America moves forward based on the brilliance of the few, but also because of the efforts of the many. I believe this is the American way. It always has been and always will be. So that's my message. The workforce is our most important element in America. You can see it in our history from Valley Forge to Iraq. You can see it in Rosie the Riveter and the engineers of the space program. You can see it in their faces and their hard work. This workforce is challenged like we've never been before. Energy and dedication and focus are no longer enough. They're American characteristics, but other people have learned them. Career and technical education is the enabler, which is our greatest weapon in this war. And business and education, and I dare say government, needs to come together to make sure that technical education, technical training is a national priority, and technical careers are a national calling, and that nobody ever thinks of a technical career like welding or auto mechanics or a programming machine on a factory as a consolation prize. They think of it as an aspiration. I'm going to finish by simply saying, as I did the other night, that I know that you're the principal drivers behind career and technical education. I know this. I am a student of careers, and I proclaim yours a noble endeavor. You really do make a difference every day. And for that, you have my congratulations and my thanks. I also tell you that if you once again, I will tell you, I believe that career and technical education is the most important thing we can do, and the time is now. It has never been more important, but it never happens. It won't happen without your energy, your commitment, and your focus. And for that, as an American, as a citizen, as a man who is interested in the future of this country, as a believer in the American